Welcome to Unsheltered Conversations, the podcast from HomeAid America, where we explore the human side of homelessness and the solutions that bring hope, dignity, and housing to those who need it most. I'm your host, Scott Larson. Today's conversation is especially meaningful as we approach Mother's Day, a time when we reflect on the strength, resilience, and the love of mothers everywhere. But for many women, especially those experiencing homelessness while pregnant or parenting young children, the journey can be incredibly fragile and uncertain. That's why I'm honored today to be joined by three people who have been part of a remarkable story, one that spans more than 3 decades of impact. Joining me are Gina Cunningham, Executive Director of HomeAid Orange County, Los Angeles, Theresa Murphy, the Executive Director of Precious Life Shelter, and Don Jacobs, the architect whose vision and commitment have helped shape every phase of Precious Life since the very beginning. Together, we're going to talk about the history of Precious Life Shelter, the partnership with HomeAid, the evolution of the campus over time, and the lives that have been transformed because of this work. We'll also talk about something pretty simple, but critically important, like diapers, and how meeting basic needs can transform and be the difference between stability and crisis for a young family. Gina, Theresa, Don, welcome. It's great to have you all here.
Good to be here.
Great to be here.
So Theresa, you and I have known each other for a number of years, but your story goes even before Gina and I were part of HomeAid. I'd like to really start with you. And for those who may not be familiar with, can you share the origin story of Precious Life Shelter, and what were you seeing at that time, and how did all this really begin for your work there in Los Alamitos, California?
It began in our founder's home. Our founder and her husband are parents of 6, and they were foster parents. And at one point in that foster, they were asked if they would house a woman who wanted to place her baby for adoption, but no place for mom to go. And her kids said, "Mom, what's the difference if we house the mom or just take the baby?" And so they said yes. And that happened 44 times in their home, and that was in the mid-'80s. And they were challenged at that point to say, we can't just talk about wanting to save lives. What more can we do? And they sent a Christmas card out to their friends, and 5 people stepped forward. And they stepped forward to say, we will help you. And so we acquired a piece of property here in Los Alamitos in 1988, and we opened it in January 1st of 1989 with 6 beds. That was the very beginning. Everything we do now began in a little home on the main street of Los Alamitos from the early hundreds. And we have been here ever since.
What struck me about what you were just saying, so Don and Theresa Sharon versus the Don and Theresa that are on here, they were your founders. And you said they housed 44 women in their home over those years in the 1980s. That's absolutely amazing that they extended themselves to do that and had the heart for these women that were really at risk and needing to make really critical decisions related to their baby. That's absolutely amazing.
It was absolutely unbelievable. And I was introduced to Don and Theresa way before they opened the shelter through Marriage Encounter, as a matter of fact. And she sort of came after me to be a volunteer. And I kept saying, I don't have time because I was busy with 4 kids of my own, and I was on many other organizations. Finally, she says, when are you going to have time? And I'll say, I'm going to give up something to be able to do this. So I came as a volunteer 1 morning a week on Tuesday mornings when my youngest son started school. And it was just to answer the phones, do the case management. Everything that we did was in this little house. It was the living quarters for the women. It was the living quarters for our house manager. It was our classroom. It was our intake. And we had just rehabbed that little house from Don and Theresa really gathering people from our community. And so I said, I'd be glad to help. And it wasn't very long after that happened that HomeAid kind of entered the picture. They entered the picture by being new, like we were in 1989, to incorporation from the BIA to what you are now, which is unbelievable in my looking back. And came to Theresa and just said, we hear that you're working with a shelter, you want to expand, how can we help? And I guess that's the beginning of our story with HomeAid. You were just HomeAid Orange County right then.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that in just a little bit. But for those that don't know Los Alamitos, because probably our listeners aren't familiar with it, what's directly across the street that's so critically
Directly across the
important.
street from us is the hospital, as a matter of fact, and the end of our street has a bus stop. So the two things that the homeless do not have are access to transportation generally, and certainly women who are homeless pregnant need medical attention. And so Teresa really looked at property to be able to acquire something that would give access for women and would allow us to be able to provide the services that were going to be necessary for them to be able to birth and deliver their child.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And what really strikes me about knowing you and knowing Teresa Sharon and Dawn was that you were creating a place where these mothers could feel safe and supported and most importantly respected. Uh, that's really been integral with your mission. So Gina, reflect back, HomeAid's partnership, as Teresa mentioned, goes all the way back to the early 1990s and really at the roots of HomeAid. Can you share how this partnership began and why this project became so foundational for HomeAid's model and what we do around the country now?
Well, I've been sitting here reflecting, and I love the fact that we're the same age and that are both nonprofits that have kind of grown up together over the last almost 40 years, Teresa. What are we, 37 this year? And
Yeah.
I remember walking through that emergency shelter, which I think you're sitting in that house right now, and knowing that this was the first thing that HomeAid came in and did renovation work on, and then just knowing the story of how both of our organizations have helped grow your organization by continuing to build the housing that you needed to take care of these women and their babies. It's such a beautiful story. And Dawn has a beautiful story that came out of this as well. So I hope we get to share that while we're on the podcast. But this is instrumental to what we do as an organization. Homemade start very small. We start to restore old homes and then we start to build new. And we've done many ground up construction projects on that very small property that you've been able to kind of grow over the years. And we're excited for our next phase of it coming up with you in the future.
So Gina, it's incredible how many lives have been impacted over the years and not just through the housing, but through stability and dignity. When you reflect back on it, because you and I and others in the homemade world aren't there at Precious Life Shelter or one of the other projects like Teresa's, but how do you reflect back on the lives that have been changed over the last 37 years?
Gosh, I've met so many moms from there. And now I'm reflecting on looking at the child care center where all the babies are after they're born and just how wonderful Teresa's staff is and how happy the families are and that they have that opportunity right there on site so they can start to restore their lives and get back into stability on their own. I mean, the second phase, the very first phase of the project that I ever saw were the efficiency units that I believe it was Centex Homes built in the back part of their property. And I thought that was such a beautiful model of once those women came through and were able to have their child, they were able to then go live on their own, but they were taught how to do that. They were um, had to put money in savings, but that money was used to be able to help them pay their rent and utilities. And Teresa and your team has just done an outstanding job of really helping these women step through their crisis and get to the other side. And it's beautiful. I love what we've done with Precious Life Shelter.
So, Gina, you and I talk often about the continuum of care, not taking out the aspect of what HUD does with a continuum of care, but just the continuum of care in general. And Precious Life Shelter reflects that full continuum from emergency shelter to short term housing to then developing permanent housing. And really, you've developed that over time with Teresa and with Dawn. Dawn, let's fold you into the conversation about it. You've really played a very unique role in this story. You've been the architect of record for every phase of Precious Life Shelter, which is now 6, 7,
6,
yeah,
yes.
Mhm.
since 1990. And we'll
Yes.
talk about the one that's being developed. But that truly, that long term commitment to one organization and the cause is really rare. Take us back to the beginning when you first walked onto the site of Precious Life and what drew you to this project and what did you begin to envision? Because I remember seeing a full campus and you just started with one building. Take us back to when you first got involved.
Okay. Well, I have to go back a little bit further in '86 when I moved from Northern California to Southern California to join the firm of Kermit Dorius. And Kermit had a firm of about 12 or 14 people and uh, did builder housing and senior apartments and such. And he was very active in the building industry. Julie Brinkerhoff got him to be on the board of HomeAid when they started in '89. And I was aware of the project we were working on in the office, helping with the master plan, so to speak, and what was happening. When it came to groundbreaking, Kermit couldn't make it. So he said, well, you go, Don. And so I did. That was my first step on site. That would have been in 1990. At the time, Don and Theresa were both there. Everyone was there. And there was this lady, Julie Brinkerhoff, who was there as a board member. She was one of the founders, and she had brought the builder on board. She was representing them. So Kermit later suggested that I start a lead breakfast with this lady, Julie Brinkerhoff, because she knew so many more people and we could share leads. So we did that once a month and we got to know each other. My wife passed away, first wife, in '92. And then Julie, as a friend, called to introduce me to some of her girlfriends about 4 months afterwards. And that didn't work, obviously. And this month we'll be celebrating our 33rd wedding anniversary. So at the time, I don't know if we really anticipated continuing to work with Precious Life, but it just became automatic because obviously having met Julie there and now married to her, I had a different interest. And so I managed to bring the firm along. And eventually in '93, some partners and we bought Kermit out. And I was able to convince my partners that we should keep doing this. So we did. And it just kept going from one to another until the drawings are now being done for the 6th shelter. And I should say, originally it was Kermit Dorius, then it became JBZ, then it became JZMK Partners, which it is now. And the first 5 were all done in-house by JZMK, or the previous firm. A couple of points. I always enjoyed when we would have a tour of the facility for a prospective builder, because going through the facility, it looked like a model home. Theresa did an incredible job of having these women, before they left for work or school or whatever they were going to do, everything was ship-shape. There was no clothes around. There were no dishes in the sink. Everything was, like I said, a model home. So impressive. I still always remember those tours. And it obviously convinced the builders as well. They were taken by it. And I think the whole program, Julie's quick explanation of how they came to HomeAid, which is part of what this has turned into, was that they would ask subcontractors for donations to build something, and they wouldn't give $5,000 or $10,000. But when they came up with the idea of HomeAid, they would easily put in 10 or 15,000 more in actual work. And donate that, and then feel much better about it at the end. So that is, to me, one of the secrets of this whole program that has been great.
You know, Don, when I think about being on the campus, I agree with you that it's beautiful. Yeah, architecturally, it's beautiful. And Theresa, your team and your residents, the women and children, it's an amazing property. But couple of things, and Gina, you can weigh in on this as well. You started off with an old home that needed to be renovated, like a 1920s farmhouse. But then one of the key things that you added was a thrift store, and really looking at providing revenue and community engagement. Theresa, tell us a little bit about that idea of incorporating a thrift store into some of those first design components. And I think HomeAid might have been challenged at the time of, we're not doing beds, but tell us about that concept of having a thrift store, part of that whole program in campus of Precious Life Shelter.
Well, I remember when we finished building the single parent efficiency units, which was in '97. And we still had one of our original buildings on the north side of our property on Reagan Street, and had an old garage, which was all of our storage of all the items that were donated to us that we kept for the women and the things that we used for our women. And we kept thinking, oh, what are we going to do with this? And at that point, HomeAid came to us and said, and I remember this so vividly, Dawn, we didn't do an elevator in the building that was the single parent efficiency, which are those one unit facilities. And they challenged us, the city did, how come you don't have a elevator? Because it's a 2-story building and it's a new construction. And we said, because we're grandfathered in, because our original house, if you remember correctly, we lifted up and moved back, and Southwest Diversified redid that house to make it a 2-story house. And you couldn't put an elevator in it because it was a 100-year-old house. When HomeAid came to us, they said, and I can't remember, Scott, if you were here already or if it was just at the end of Mike's tenure, he said, we can put an ADA unit in the new building. And I looked at him and I said, new building? I mean, we barely finished building this building. And some of that was a challenge. It was a very rainy season. And I can remember him saying, no, we can do it. And we have somebody who probably wants to step alongside of us already. And we had funds set aside left that we had saved. And we thought, okay, so we said, let's go for it. And I can remember with the whole team from that project talking about what we wanted to do. Well, we said, can't we consider, and I can remember going and saying, can't we consider reconfiguring the laundry room area, which is the front of the old building, as a small thrift store? And we said a small thrift store because then we could pay our utilities. I thought, oh, if we make $1,000 a month, that will help us to take care of utilities. And well, it's not beds, but it's under beds. It's under beds. It's in the same building with beds. And so HomeAid said yes. And that 750 square feet, which is all it was the impetus for our social enterprise. But it also was the impetus for us to be able to use that enterprise to teach our women. So many of our women were coming off the street with no skills. They had never worked. They didn't have any idea of how to go about applying for a job. How do you dress for a job? What do you do when you go to a job? And this became a place where we could actually show them, let us go over there. We'll show you how you sort donated items, how you price them, how you hang them, how you handle customer service. And they could use that for a resume because they didn't have a resume. They didn't have anything to put down. And so that was the sort of the beginning. And that was a wonderful partnership with HomeAid because at that point, we knew we had a little bit of a nest egg every single day to be able to set aside for future expansion, for development, for programs, and for our women.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I know, Gina, that strikes both you and I as far as developing that social enterprise. But one of the other things, Gina, that I know was very important to you in those early days were two things that were on the property that Dawn built the buildings around, and those were trees.
Yes.
Gina, can you reflect on the importance of preserving trees on this site? Because this is a very, very small campus.
Well,
And what Dawn did to preserve and design around those trees.
yes, and Dawn, I've made this happen in other projects of ours. I'm like, you are not
Good.
to get rid of that avocado tree. You are not to tear down that orange tree because, first of all, they were here before we were. And it's important because it provides fruit and shade and all of the things that you need to have a great campus. So I love that you designed around those in one of the properties that we did here in the city of Orange that I live in. It's an interesting ADU that we had to shape kind of boom, boom, to stay away from the avocado tree that I was not letting anyone touch. I was going to tie myself to that thing, and it's thriving today. And I know yours is beautiful, Theresa.
Ours is gorgeous.
And that orange tree that's right outside the transitional home. Yep, there's so much great property there, and for everyone listening, you need to understand the importance of having Dawn's design vision through this entire campus. It is beautifully designed together, and even the homes that we helped build down the street still match the Precious Life campus over there. And so having you as the architect and the visionary on this has really made it be a beautiful, beautiful property for them.
Thank you. It was interesting having different builders because each builder would look at what had been done before, and they knew that they had to do better than that. They could do better than that. And so I think we got some incredible quality of construction from that competitiveness that builders have, which is built in. Also, the program changed. We didn't need 2-bedroom units when we first started, but then we did. We adapted to that. I wanted to mention on the avocado tree, when I was laying that out, I was so happy to be able to have the second floor landing to get up to the second floor. Right next to the avocado tree. So you didn't need a long stick picker to do it. You could just go up on the landing and get your avocados. Another interesting thing was I have to mention the city of Los Alamitos. All city planning departments can be challenging, and I was happy to see that they worked with us. And we had one continuous person who knew Theresa, and we were able to make things work. Particularly parking is always a problem, even though none of the women have cars. We had to provide garages, which became classrooms. And we had all these things we had to adapt to. And then, of course, we had to create a child care center as well, because these women had to have someone look after the child while they were out doing whatever. I'm always, like Gina said, I'm always pleased and amazed when I walk through the campus each time. You'd probably never design it that way if you were doing it from scratch, from one big building, one big campus, but it's close enough to what was originally done that those spaces become great outdoor rooms for the women to use and the kids and such. So I get a gratification that is beyond expectation in seeing what Theresa, Gina, and HomeAid is done with the property. The builders, I think one of them said, well, we could save so much money if we make this all stucco instead of the siding. And it's like, no, you can't do that. It doesn't fit with the character that we've established in 1990, and it'll stand out and not be good. So anyway, we won all those battles, fortunately, and I think they stand by themselves, and the new one will as well.
So, Gina, thinking back through this campus, and Theresa, you can weigh in on this as well. It's evolved. You've gone from emergency shelter, including a thrift store. You've had to have offices and management. There were efficiency units, ultimately congregate living, a house manager, childcare, ultimately then more permanent, larger houses. Gina, how has that evolved? And when you've brought a builder there, what's been their perspective when they've seen this? And then what are you anticipating for the next phase that Dawn has designed?
Well, I love that we have every phase of what you need as a mom in crisis on that property. And the family reunification apartments. I mean, there's women that may have lost their children in the past. And so this was a way for them to be able to reunify with those children. So even those are on the property. When you bring a builder there, you can't help but fall in love with the program. How can you not want to help women and babies and children be able to have a safe life? I don't want to say it's easy, because I know right now we're working through who is going to be that fabulous builder on our next phase, because our industry is in a little bit of a ooh, what's happening right now? But we will find the right partner and be able to build. I believe this is affordable housing for the families, correct, Theresa?
Permanent housing, yes.
Permanent.
Permanent rental units.
Yeah, and that's really what we need. We have found as nonprofits that we have done our best with emergency and transitional as we need it, but we definitely need permanent affordable housing options, because we will never get out of this crisis without it. So we invite anyone that wants to get involved, whether you're watching from across the other side of the United States or globally. There's something for everyone to do to pitch in to help us make this impact.
Well, I'd like to say just one of the things that I think is a really imperative type of thing to share with about the permanent housing. Everyone talks about affordable housing, and in California, there's no such thing as affordable housing. So when you look at someone coming off the street with no job experience and getting into the job market, which they must do in our program, where are they going to go if they have a job? Their child is being raised. They're still young. They're not making a huge salary yet. Where are they going to be able to stay for a longer period of time to continue to work, save, and parent their child? And the units that Don helped us design over on Cherry Street have been fabulous. One thing I'd like to share, we've had moms graduate from there, obviously, into going into careers, getting married, buying a home. But our very first client there is getting ready to move because she's been approved for first time home buyer
Mm.
program.
Oh,
And it is so exciting because she comes over and she says, will you go with me to look at this property? I want to do this. I want to do that. Without having had her be able to stay there for that duration of time. Her little girl's 9, and it's month to month. It's month to month rent for them, and it's reasonable. They can afford to, so they can save something. So she had enough to prove that she could qualify for as a first-time home buyer. And that's such an exciting thing for her to be able to share with other people. She happened to be at our last event. She was talking about it, and people called afterwards and said, could you reach out to her and ask her if she would come and talk to a group that we need to share with how they can be involved? So the pebbles goes in the water, but it goes way beyond Precious Life Shelter. If we had to do it again, and before Theresa died last year, we talked about it. We would never use the word shelter. We would just say Precious Life. It is a home. It is a place where they come to find a place of dignity, respect, and know that they and their child are precious. Saving babies one mother at a time is 100% success because every child counts.
Yeah,
making me
Theresa,
emotional.
that is
It's
so
amazing.
powerful. And to see what has happened and that commitment that you've made, the built environment that Gina and Don have created, and then that changed life. Yeah, it's absolutely profound.
To
And
share publicly, which I do a lot on HomeAid's behalf. I talk about HomeAid because you guys were so instrumental in what we have been able to do. But Don, I want to say publicly to you that your commitment to help us develop our campus, to make it be continuity featured. People are amazed when they come here and they say, wow, we never knew there was even a shelter here, because they don't realize that the women live in these buildings. They really don't. And once we moved the thrift store out of the property that we convinced you to build it in and made that our original childcare, we could put the thrift store on the corner. And so it has been even more of an access for us to be able to continue to expand. And we use those funds for operations. So our donor expansion can be how we buy the new property so Don can design for me again.
Well, nothing is done by one person, and certainly not me, although I've led the charge on this. But I've always had great cooperation from my partners in all these many years and the staff when we said, okay, who's willing to step up and carry this through the construction documents and make sure everything's right. And we never had a lack of people, and they all felt better for it when they did it and saw the end result as well. So it was a great morale booster for our firm to be able to contribute the way we did. Like I say, no one does it alone, and I certainly didn't. I had great backup. And I thank all of those. If anyone's listening that's worked on it, my great appreciation for help, for all the help.
yep. Well, and Don, that's really what it's all about. You design, you have team members design. Gina brings in the builders. Theresa, you have your residents, the women and their babies that need the help. And it's all about bringing all that together to restore hope and to bring dignity and provide that path forward. So I want to shift to a little bit of the conversation to something that might seem very small, but it's incredibly significant and touched on at the beginning of the conversation, and that's about diapers. At HomeAid, through the Essentials program and through what's called Builders for Baby drives, we've seen firsthand how something as basic as diapers can create real stability for these families, for these moms. Theresa, can you talk about the role that essential items like diapers play for the mothers that you serve and then we'll have Gina talk about kind of what's going on right now with the Essentials drives.
Well, one of the things that people sometimes don't realize is the expense of diapers. And so the expense of diapers to someone who can't afford them is very overwhelming. You know, at $40 to $60 a box, that's something that will make mom think, what am I going to do? And from the life they came from, having nothing to having a place where they have to have those items, being able to provide them for them is so important. And I think when you, HomeAid, made the decision and capitalized on the idea of the Essentials Drive, really brought the communities together. Because one of the things that I did when the first year you did this, I went into the bank, with the shelter banks, and I said, they're going to do this drive, and I would like you to be a part because it actually serves the people that are right here in your neighborhood. And I'll be very honest, at all these years that HomeAid has been doing this, we on a regular basis, and maybe because it says babies, we on a regular basis always have an abundance of diapers because everyone wants to bring diapers. And I have never said no to somebody who walked up to the door or called us from an organization or a church and said, I have a newborn and we don't have a diaper. And we can help share those diapers with somebody else.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
So Gina, you're gearing up for this year's Essentials Drive. Tell us what's going on and why that's such an important part of your work and the work of HomeAid across the country.
We are. And I love how you started this podcast celebrating Mother's Day because that is when our Essentials Diaper Drive begins. And it made sense for us as HomeAid OCLA to start that on Mother's Day and kind of end it on Father's Day because it's not just moms that need diapers, the dads need them too for their babies. But it's such a wonderful way to engage the community and to provide a resource that is necessary. A baby needs to have diapers, and that helps uplift those families and those parents, and it helps alleviate the financial burden for those moms, but for the nonprofits that they might be staying at. And we in this local area have collected, boy, we're over 13 million at this point after I think 18 years. We're the largest donation to the local diaper bank. We help supply our nonprofit partners. I love that you share them because that was the whole part about the power of collaboration and the message of community. We should all be neighbors helping each other. And this is a great way for us to be able to do that. So we invite anyone listening, if you're in the Southern California area, in Orange, Los Angeles, and Ventura counties, we are doing a diaper drive beginning on Mother's Day, and it will end with our big event of delivery on May 29th. It's a great thing, and we're gonna make sure you've got those diapers, Theresa, because we know those newborns need about eight to 10 of them a day, and that is a lot of diapers.
At least.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, is that, we mentioned that one of the things that Don helped us develop, that HomeAid helped us develop was an on-site childcare. And because our moms go to work, we supply all the diapers for them while they're working. So that's not something that has to ever come out of what they have to supply. When I say what they have to supply, they have to bring a diaper bag with everything in it all the time. They don't have to worry about diapers and wipes because they're supplied to the infant care. And if you can have up to 10 infants in there, let me tell you how many diapers you go through in a day. It's a lot.
It's a lot of diapers.
So Theresa, we've talked about next construction project. We've talked about your thrift store. We've talked about the diapers that hopefully our listeners will get involved with. But what are other ways that either people can support Precious Life directly or a similar program in their community because they may not be in Southern California? How can people reach out and learn how to support the type of work that you do?
Well, I think two things that are really important. Agencies need volunteers. They need someone who's going to be able to be there to just maybe answer the phone, maybe be a mentor to the women that are there in the facility, maybe be a babysitter if they don't have a licensed facility like ours. Our women have to attend classes, and it's distracting for them to have the baby in the classroom because it's parenting and birthing and domestic violence, things that they really need maybe to get other children back. So that's one way. Volunteering is huge. Obviously, financial support towards the organization is always necessary. And most every organization has a website. People can donate through that. or if they reach out through their local congregation, any church or philanthropic organization. Most of them want to partner with nonprofits that are reputable in their community. So ask your Chamber of Commerce, ask your Better Business Bureau in your community, do you have nonprofits that support women and children and families? Our women are families. Just because they have a child doesn't mean they're not a family. I think everyone thinks a family is 3 people or 4 people, or anytime there's a mom with a child, they're a family. Even before that baby's born, they're a family and they need help. Our thrift store always needs volunteers, and I'm sure other people who have social enterprises, they have the same type of needs. Without those people, most organizations could not stay open. If we had to pay for every single volunteer in a professional capacity, most of us would have to close because we couldn't afford to do that. So the help that the volunteer, the community offers, you have a family foundation and you want to give, you have an IRA that you need to make distributions for, all of us will be able to use those funds. And in your local community, you're going to know where they go. You're going to get to see it. And I think that's one of the things that our supporters enjoy so much. Many of you mentioned the fact that we allow tours. We want people to see what was built to serve the population. Your signs, your HomeAid signs, your builder signs are in every single house. They have never been taken down. We want the people to know the same builder didn't do every building. Somebody new came along, and many of those subs come back to us and say, if you need such and such, call us because we'll help. And even if they don't do it pro bono, they'll give us a good rate. That's another way to have that networking happen in the community. You build lives by touching somebody else.
Yeah, that's so very, very true. As we're looking to wrap up, we're approaching Mother's Day, and this conversation is just a powerful reminder that behind every statistic is a story. And Teresa's touched on those. It's touched us on numerous times in this conversation. And behind every story is that mother who's doing everything that she can to create a better future for her child. So what makes Precious Life so special is not just the housing, it's the community, it's the care, it's the long-term commitment from people like Dawn and Gina, the builders and organizations like HomeAid, and certainly leaders like Theresa, you and your board. This is what it looks like when compassion and expertise come together, and it truly changes lives. So Gina, Theresa, and Dawn, thank you for being part of this conversation, sharing your stories, how this has impacted all of you, because it's impacted me, and the important work that you continue to do. And thank you for everyone who's been listening. If this conversation has resonated with you, I encourage you to learn more about HomeAid, support an essentials diaper drive in your community, or find a way that you can get involved locally like Theresa, Gina, and Dawn have obviously done. Because sometimes the smallest act of support can make the biggest difference in keeping a family safe, together, and on a path forward. I'm Scott Larson. This is Unsheltered Conversations. Thank you for being part of the conversation today.